Welcome to the PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. Welcome back to another episode of The PA is In. Today we have a special guest, PA, women's wellness coach, and fellow podcast host, Amy Dave. Amy is here to talk all about cycle syncing and helping busy, stressed out, exhausted, overwhelmed women and moms reclaim their life and their energy inside of a very busy life. I'm so excited to welcome Amy to the show. Without further ado, here she is, Amy Dave. Amy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tracy, for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
So tell us about you, who you are, and what you do.
I became a PA in 2001, and I worked for several years, and then I became a stay-at-home mom to 3 boys, and went back to work, got burnt out, and became a health coach. And so here I am now. I help moms who are just struggling with chronic fatigue, feelings of overwhelm, and stress, and I show them simple ways to overcome all of it.
I love that, because what mom is not overwhelmed and stressed and fatigued? Like, I feel like if we, whether it's portrayed in media or really the way that we feel about our lives as moms, that is like everyone's thinking, well, she just described me or all of my mom friends or all of my, like that is such a common thing for women and for mothers to just feel mental overwhelm, logistical overwhelm, exhaustion, and like we don't have the energy to do the things that we want to do. So let's talk, we're going to skip around a little bit here. Let's talk about what some of those common symptoms of being a modern mom are. What are these things that people are experiencing that are just sort of writing them off as like, this is normal, this is par for the course if I have young children, that maybe are things that could actually be better?
So this feeling that we get of overwhelm, stress, anxiety, and then we have all of our physical symptoms that we get every month. So bloating, cramping, irritability, not sleeping so great, heavy bleeding. And we are just taught all of these things are normal. They're expected as in motherhood and to deal with them. And I don't think most people know how to deal with them properly. I certainly didn't. If you had asked me 5 years ago, I was suffering through all of these things every day.
And also, this is an area that commonly when people go to their provider and ask for help or describe these cyclical, non-specific, very common symptoms, they may get an answer like, that's hormonal, or that's very normal, or you're postpartum, or this is how being a woman is, where we're really not taking the patient seriously and understanding, hey, this is obviously bothersome to them, otherwise they wouldn't have come to me. So what do you say to the person who has either minimized their own symptoms in their mind or had that message given to them by a clinician?
So I know that feeling very well because I did both. I was telling myself, this is just how it is. If you're a woman, if you're a mom, you're supposed to get cramps and heavy bleeding and everything else. And my doctor said the same thing. There's not much else we can do for you. I can't take hormonal birth control for other medical reasons, but they didn't have any other options for me. They were like, take your ibuprofen, use your heating pad, you'll be better in a couple of days. And for a long time, I accepted that answer.
Which, let's all agree, that's symptoms, not the disease, right? Like that's like just saying like try to mitigate the way that this is impacting your life, not investigating the cause.
Yes. Yes.
So how did you get to the bottom of what was happening with you, and how do you help your clients or patients to understand what's happening with them?
So after you become a mom, and you're running around, especially a mom of, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids even, you're running around, you're taking care of everybody else's calendars, agendas, you're working, and you're not taking care of yourself, right? And I just thought, my PMS symptoms are guaranteed every month. My heavy bleeding is guaranteed every month for several days. I was always anemic, you know, and nothing happened. When I went back to school to get my master's for PAs, I also got an advanced certificate in nutrition. And this was the first time I had heard about cycle syncing. But I kind of put it in the back of my mind like, oh, I'm busy. I have a job right now. I'm in school. I have kids. I have, other responsibilities. I'll look at it someday. I'll read the book someday. And then COVID hit. And it was a blessing in disguise for me because suddenly I had all this time. And I saw that I had bought the book on cycle syncing. It was sitting on my bookshelf for like 2 or 3 years untouched, gathering dust. And finally during COVID, I was like, you know what? Let me read it. I have time. I can do it. And I did. And I implemented the techniques that I learned about cycle syncing. And I started very basic. I just changed my diet a little bit. I changed the way I was exercising. Within 4 months, my symptoms were gone. I had no cramps, no bloating. My mood was so much more stable. I wasn't irritable. And my bleeding, it was only like 48 hours, heavy bleeding. And I was just shocked that this, just changing the way I eat and the exercises I did, and maybe my sleep habits too. Those are the 3 things I started with. It made me feel like a new woman.
So this is one of those instances where it's the doing is the believing. Like you can see the science, you can, understand it from a, scientific research standpoint, but unless or until you implement one of these things in your life, it's not um that like you believe it, right? Like you believe it in theory, but to know it and to sort of apply it into your life is a totally different experience. So tell us, what is cycle syncing? Because I think there's a lot of us with like wearable devices or an app, or we're, aware, generally aware of where we are in our cycle, if not only when it's like, when am I going to have my period, which I think is, not the best or only thing that we should be keeping track of. How is cycle syncing different than simply tracking your cycle or knowing where you are in that cycle?
So, cycle syncing is an intuitive way of living in connection with your body. And I'm going to just give you a brief description of the circadian rhythm, which you've probably heard of, right? We all have this 24-hour clock, and our hormones fluctuate in the 24-hour period. Cortisol rises in the morning, right, to help us wake up. Melatonin's high at night to help us calm down. Our liver is metabolizing things in the middle of the night. Our brain is processing the day's events. We're doing wound healing and tissue repair at night, right? So we're kind of familiar with this 24-hour clock. And if we follow the rhythm of the 24-hour clock, we're generally healthier, right? So in the same context, women also have this monthly clock. So in the menstrual cycle, your body goes through 4 phases. And same thing, you're having hormone fluctuations, your reproductive organs are doing something different in each phase. And your body needs different nutrients and different types of exercises in each of those phases for optimal performance. And I can give you examples of each. So, just from a dietary standpoint, you need extra magnesium in your luteal phase. You need extra B vitamins in your luteal phase. You need extra antioxidants when you're ovulating. So those are just some of the dietary things that change for each week. And same thing with your exercises. So in ovulation, you have a surge of testosterone, which gives you more natural energy. And that's when you want to be doing your most intense exercises. Whereas in the luteal phase, you want to maybe not do so much cardio, but focus more on strength training. And during your bleed, you want to do either gentle yoga or go for a walk or rest. So doing the same things and eating the same foods every day is not living in tune to your menstrual cycle.
So talk to me like a provider who's been out of school for 13 years, and other than my own research for my own self, needs a refresher on which phases are which and what is happening in your body at each of those phases.
Yes. So, and this is great for everybody else too. So you have 4 phases, and I'm going to do it opposite of how we do it in the medical community because it's easier to understand. In the follicular phase, your ovary is maturing an egg to be released later in the month. So your hormones start off low and they gradually increase during this phase. The next phase is ovulation, where the ovary releases the mature egg. And if you're tracking your cycles, this is where your basal body temperature will change. This is where your ovulation test kits will become positive. And this is where your body has a surge of certain hormones. Then in the luteal phase, the uterus is thickening the lining in anticipation that an embryo is going to come and implant. And the estrogen and progesterone levels hit peak levels in this phase. And as the hormone levels bottom out, you get your monthly bleed, which is the last phase menstruation.
And if you're just starting out, like you're just thinking, yeah, this sounds like something that could be helpful to my life. How do we start? We start with tracking symptoms. We start with cervical mucus. We start with temperature. Like, what are we measuring? If we're like, I don't know, I have no idea what day of my phase I'm in. I have no idea what phase I'm in, even if I know what day I'm on. Where do we start?
You start by tracking your periods. So you can do this on paper with a regular paper calendar, or there are several digital apps that are made to track your cycle. So the first thing you want to do is note down the date you're bleeding, how many days you're bleeding, and then when the next bleed is coming. So normally it should be about 28 to 32 days. But if you have PCOS or, other conditions that cause irregular periods and you're not having them monthly, first you want to be aware of that. Like if they're coming every 6 weeks or 8 weeks or every couple of months, even for some people. Once you're aware of your cycle, both how long the bleeding is lasting and how many days go in between each bleed, then you can start to figure out which phase you're in. And again, a lot of these cycle tracking apps, they also tell you when you should be ovulating. Some of them even tell you when you should be in each of your 4 phases. So it's really great to just use that as a guide. But in short, you have your bleed. The week after is your follicular phase. The week in the mid-cycle area is the ovulation. And your PMS week is the luteal phase.
We love a great side hustle here. If you've been looking for a flexible way to earn extra income without picking up more shifts, my friend Bree Retzner has something worth checking out. She's a PA and recruiter working with a telehealth company in a 1099 role, sharing compounded GLP-1s and soon to launch products like hormone replacement therapy. It's not an MLM, simply referring potential customers, and it's free to do. And Bree will teach you exactly how to do it. You can find her email, number to text or call, and the link to sign up in the show notes. And so to the person listening who's like, this is true, and I need to be better about this, but what can I do about that stress and that exhaustion and that overwhelm? Like, I'm still going to have so much to do, even if I know that I'm in my luteal phase, right? Like, how do I apply that to my life?
So there are different ways. Cycle syncing actually works with other things too. So nutrition, exercise, how you book your calendar, And even your brain is primed for different things in each week of the cycle. So you have in the follicular phase, your brain wants to be creative and brainstorm and try something new. In ovulation, you're naturally more open to conversations and you can have better, deeper conversations. That's when you want to do like a presentation or schedule a big meeting. In the luteal phase, your intuition is really high. So journaling is really great for maybe, if you're struggling with something and you just want to get some clarity and guidance. Your gut reaction is a little bit stronger in the luteal phase. Menstruation is where you want to just kind of rest and reflect on the past month. So you can break down, and again, I don't recommend doing all of these things at once. I started with just diet and exercise, and I kept adding things in one by one as I got comfortable with it. And so after my physical symptoms went away, within a few more months of cycle syncing, I was like, I haven't had a migraine in a long time. Or I'm less stressed. Or my husband's like, you haven't yelled at the kids or me or whatever. It's been 6 months. So you start to notice these changes, and they're shifts because wellness is a journey, and I'm still on my journey today. But you just take one thing at a time and keep adding it to your daily routine. And eventually you're going to have so many changes and you're going to feel like a brand new person. And this is actually, once I started feeling better physically, and then I went into like, let's work on my mindset and my, emotions, and let's work on spirituality. And all of these things kind of grew exponentially from my very first thing of I just want to get rid of my monthly symptoms.
Yeah, and this makes so much sense to me because as a woman, you're not the same every day, right? You sort of feel that you're going through these changes and these cycles throughout the month. And so I think we all sort of know that, right? We know that these things come as we go through the cycle. But the thing that makes you, I think, for me at least, that has made me feel, I don't want to say confused, but just like it's happening to me and I don't know sort of why, is that when you do the cycle syncing, when you do the tracking, it's no longer, I don't know, I have a hair trigger temper and I don't know why. It's like, oh, I feel like I'm short with my husband and kids and I know why. It takes the mystery out of like why you feel this way. Like I was just saying before we hit record, I'm training for this big triathlon and I had this great week of training where I was just like, everything was going right and my workouts were fast. And I was just like, am I getting faster? Am I getting better? Or is this just the midpoint of my cycle? I'm just like, but the fact that that was even, like, in my mind, I could tell you months ago that would not have been something that I would even have considered. Like, I wouldn't have even been thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable how we don't listen to our bodies. I mean, we're just told to ignore it, do the same thing every day, push, 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 and that's what's making us all sick.
Yeah, and when I was super burned out, if I could go back and tell the me of pre-burnout and even the me who was in the midst of burnout, if I could like Scrooge McDuck, Christmas past, come back to my former self and say something, I would say, you have to listen to your body because my body was whispering that I needed to slow down. And then it was saying that I needed to slow down. And then it was yelling that I needed to slow down. And I just ignored and ignored and ignored. And I kept going and I kept pushing. And I ended up super sick and very unwell because of the things that I was ignoring, because of the things that I was just like, I've always been able to do it. Why wouldn't I be able to do it now? And sort of pushing through, probably despite how I was feeling, despite the fact that my body was like, this doesn't feel like a good idea. Like maybe we should rest and not work. And I was just like more trying to prove to myself that I could do it, trying to prove to everyone else that I could do it. And that ignoring of those symptoms it can be incredibly costly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And we're not taught this, right? Even as PAs, we didn't know that there was anything different.
Yeah.
Right? You're not taught this in PA school. You're not taught They're not taught this in medical school. I just gave a talk to a group of local doctors a couple months ago, and I had physicians come up to me saying, I've been in practice for 30 years and I've never heard of this. And I'm like, yep, that's why I'm here.
And my favorite piece of this is how it ties into your life, that it's not just something to do for the sake of doing it. It's that you're doing it and you're applying that knowledge and information to make it easier on yourself. Because, like, yes, you can do active exercise when you're bleeding. You can take a rest day when you're in the other parts of your cycle, but it's like swimming upstream. I feel like trying to do it the same way every day, ignoring that this is happening, is like swimming upstream. Whereas figuring it out and saying, like, okay, this is the direction the current is going. Like, why don't we just work with it? Like, why don't we just try to make it easier on ourselves?
Yeah. And I actually, when I started cycle syncing, I started eating more and exercising less. So I was eating too many salads, not enough nutrients. And I was exercising. I was doing cardio 45 to 60 minutes most days of the week. And those two things were not good for my body. So now I'm eating more. I probably eat like 4 smaller meals and then a couple of snacks during the day, but they're all mostly nutrient dense foods. I mean, I'm not perfect. My symptoms are still here and there present, but they're much better. But I'm eating more nutrient dense foods. I'm eating more calories, and I'm exercising about 15 to 30 minutes a day. But in those 15 to 30 minutes, I'm like pushing it. Either I'm doing my cardio in the ovulation phase, or I'm doing my strength training in the luteal phase, or I'm doing my yoga in the menstruation phase. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm eating more, exercising less, and I have more muscle tone now than I have ever had in my life. And I'm in my mid 40s, so it's not, yeah, it's doable. And it's not hard. It's actually, once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. Cuz now I know what foods cause cramps, right? So I might still have a mozzarella stick knowing that fried foods can increase cramps. And if I have cramps, I know why, but I'm not, right? But it's much better. And there's so many things like that. There's so many inflammatory foods, right, that increase the cramping. There are foods that affect our mental clarity. The sugars, too much sugars can raise your cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So all of these things, they all fall into piece, and you get like a whole, woman who's living intuitively with her body in all ways, if you follow it.
Yeah. And it feels to me like it's so strategic, like, as opposed to these things are happening and I'm just going to live my life, like, ignoring them or in spite of them, that I'm going to say, like, hey, this is powerful. This is happening. There's nothing I can do to stop it happening, right? It's going to keep happening. Can I sort of harness this? So talk to me about that intuitive piece, because as someone who is historically identified as largely type A and an achiever, intuitive anything makes me slightly uncomfortable because you're asking me to not do it my way every day. So, like, how can we get comfortable with that and also try to tune into some of these symptoms and some of these sort of like softer signs of things that are happening in our bodies?
So let's put the science to it for our type A personalities, okay? I'll just give you some very brief examples, but in the follicular phase, if you're eating lightly sauteed vegetables and lighter grains, such as corn and quinoa and things like that, in ovulation, you want to be eating more raw fruits and vegetables. So salads and smoothies are really great when you're ovulating. In the luteal phase, they're not so great because you want soups or stews or warmer foods or roasted vegetables, which actually bring out the natural sweetness of the vegetables if you roast them. So it curbs your sugar cravings in the luteal phase, right? In menstruation, again, you want to be eating soups or stews or warm foods. You don't want to be eating too many salads. So there is a scientific process behind this, and I actually that talk that I gave to doctors, I created it into like a mini course of like an introduction of how to integrate the menstrual cycle into a women's wellness plan for providers. Because again, we had no idea that this was even there. So, things like constipation increases in the luteal phase. So make sure you're getting extra fiber, or you need extra B vitamins in the luteal phase. So chickpeas and things like that are really great. Um, you need cruciferous vegetables when you're ovulating. So carrots, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, are really great. And I'm not following this again 100% of the time, but I try to make sure in the week I'm ovulating, like, did I have a salad today? Or was I supposed to eat this? So I'll give you a story real quick. My husband and I go out for lunch when he's home sometimes during the week. And before we would just go wherever. And then I started cycle syncing. I was like, he's like, you want to go to this restaurant? I'm like, you know what? I'm supposed to be eating a salad this week. Let's go somewhere where we can get a salad. And then he'd be like, oh, okay. And then the following week, he'd be like, you want to go here? And I'm like, no, this week I got to eat soups. And, let's go eat soup. So now he'll just be like, what do you need to eat this week? Like, that's where we'll go.
Where do you want to go? His hormones are the same every day. So he doesn't.
Yeah. He's like, what do you need to eat today? Just tell me and we'll go. But yeah, it's, even if you start, following some of the guidelines. I had a client, she noticed changes in just 1 month, and she was just doing mainly diet. And she was like, you know what? I wasn't as irritable, and my moods were stable throughout the month. And all she did was switch out the foods that she was eating. So it's a process, and it does take time. And like I said, you just take one thing at a time, whatever you're comfortable with. And once you get used to that, you add something else, and then you add something else.
Are you feeling stuck, burned out, or craving a little more flexibility and financial freedom? You're not alone. So many clinicians feel trapped in the grind, overworked, underpaid, and unsure how to pivot. But here's the truth. Your skills are valuable beyond the clinic. That's why I created the 48 Side Gig Ideas for Healthcare Providers guide, a free PDF packed with practical, creative, and immediately cash-generating ideas that you can start right now. From telehealth to medical writing and patient advocacy to app development, and even a little note on podcasting, these things aren't fluff. These are real, proven opportunities that other providers are already doing. You don't have to figure it out alone. This guide will help you explore new passions, learn how to make extra money, and make the first step towards multiple income streams and building the life and career you actually want. Download your free copy today at tracybingaman.com/gig or click the link in the show notes and start creating financial freedom and cash flow flexibility on your own terms. Because you, my friend, are more than just your clinical job, and taking the first step to generating alternative revenue streams is waiting for you inside the Side Gig Guide. Find it now in the show notes. I feel like that makes this big, huge thing and takes it and breaks it down into, these are some things that I can do, now, increasing awareness, doing this tracking, doing that thing. And the other thing that your description of what you should be aiming to eat and what you're trying to eat when sort of brings to mind, like, that to me sounds like we've taken the calendar of like a year and these like seasonal things that we think are like eating in like the summer, spring, winter, fall. And we have made that year into this 28-day, I'm sort of saying in quotes, 28-day cycle, right? And that there's something so beautiful about that in terms of like seeing this as the seasonality, like what season am I in during this monthly cycle, which I think can historically feel like a curse in terms of this burden of, 30 years of reproduction, 30 years of menstruating, this happening every month, and take it into like, oh, this is something that we can sort of work with and harness the power of. And that is, beautiful. And also something that is a work in progress, right? None of us are getting this right, every day of every month, all the time. Can you tell us more about how the person listening can sort of take this information and apply it and be more active active in their pursuit of wellness. I recently saw this quote about how wellness is an active pursuit, not a passive state. Like we seem to think like I am well, but really what we're doing is like trying to pursue wellness and be on this journey towards wellness. So how can we apply some of this in our day-to-day?
Well, the easiest way to do it, like you said, is to listen to your body. Because when I'm eating the foods that I'm supposed to be eating, I'm like, oh my God, this salad is delicious today. Like it's so good. And if I'm happen to be out or whatever, we're eating a salad, in my menstrual phase, I might be like, this salad's okay. It's not hitting the spot today, right? Like your body will tell you. But the most important thing I think is just start tracking when you have your period, because that will help you figure out, one, if you are having regular cycles, and two, if you're not, there are things you can do to start having regular cycles. So a lot of foods that are considered inflammatory, things like dairy, gluten, processed foods, sugary snacks, they can affect your menstrual cycle. And if you're not having regular cycles, if you have PCOS, if you're, a little bit overweight, estrogen is actually stored in the fat cells. So all of these things can prevent you from having a regular 28-day cycle, but you can start there and say, okay, well, let's get my cycle to 28 days first, or 32 days, or, 30 days. Let's start changing the way I eat. Let's go out for a walk every day. If I've never done any exercise in my life ever, you're not going to start by lifting heavy weights and doing this. You're going to go for a 10-minute walk, right? You're going to increase the speed and the distance as you get better. If you're stressed out, again, you're raising your cortisol levels. So you're going to start with a 5-minute gratitude journal practice, right? It's not big, huge things, but small shifts over time. And then as you keep adding to them, will give you big results.
Mm. And personally, I have found the busier and more overscheduled I am, the less likely I am to make or take the time to really check in and see how I am feeling. So, as someone who is, I feel like I'm doing all the things, right? Working clinically, running a home, running a business, having that time of checking in. How did I feel yesterday? How do I feel today? What do I feel like I need? And the second piece of that is then being willing to deviate from the plan of what I thought I was going to do today, what I thought I had the energy and the bandwidth to do today, and being able to sort of take that input data from myself, right? How am I feeling? What do I need? And then apply that to what I'm actually going to do so that I'm getting what I need. We don't do that often enough. Do you have any tips for us to be strategic about checking in and seeing how we're feeling as we go throughout our lives?
Yeah. And this is still something I struggle with. So I started with a 5-minute kind of a meditation, deep breathing kind of an exercise where I would just sit. I would set the timer on my phone for 5 minutes, and I would just sit. And if you've heard any of these, meditative tutorials or anything, they tell you just focus on your breath. Like if a thought comes in your mind, just push it out. You can think about it again in 5 minutes. And for first maybe couple of months, after like 2 minutes, I'm looking at the timer. I'm like, is it time to be done? Am I finished? Did my timer stop? What happened? And I mean, this was a couple of years ago, and slowly I increased the time, went from 5 minutes to 7 minutes. Now I'm working on 10 minutes, and I still get to like the 8.5 minute mark, and I open my eyes. I'm like, did my timer go off? Is it time? So it's a practice, but in that 5 minutes, it just gives your body a chance to kind of assess. How am I feeling? What's going on? Is there anything that's troubling me? Why is it bothering me? Some people do journaling instead of meditation. They just sit for the 5 minutes of journaling and just let your thoughts out. You'll start to get maybe some other new creative ideas, because your brain has that space to think and to assess and to create. And but it is a practice and it does take time and it's not easy.
Yeah, making that part of the rhythm of life is something that I am still working on, that I, have periodically integrated as a regular part of life. And still, I find my natural inclination is to quickly move on to the next task, to get that next task done and repeat until it's time to be sleeping. That pause does not come naturally to me. And also the question of how am I feeling and what do I need is one that is a challenge for me to answer honestly and accurately, right? That I'm able to tune in and into it and know with some degree of certainty, like, hey, here's how I'm doing. I've worked with some coaches in the past who have asked me questions about that. And unlike what I enjoy, it's not a multiple choice question, right? It's not like good, bad, and different other. It's very deep in terms of really how are you doing? And so, this is a learned skill. This is something to practice and hone. And also what I have found is when I'm in the habit of doing this, I throughout the day will notice things that I'll think, oh, like there's a clue, there's a clue, there's a clue. But when I'm not in the habit of doing this, I will just drive right past those moments on to the next without sort of realizing or picking up that thread of like, oh, why do I feel that way? Or like, oh, I feel that way again. Why is that the way that I feel right now? So being in that habit or practice brings those things top of mind for me, which then helps me to have some data and some information when I'm asking, like, hey, how's it going? How are things?
Yeah. So I actually started when I was researching cycle syncing and reading books on it. I have a chart in my kitchen cabinet. It's like a huge, like page and a half long spreadsheet, and it's got the 4 phases. It's got the foods that I should be eating for each phase, the exercises I should be doing, how my social calendar should be booked, how my relationship, my intimacy should be going, because all of that changes, right? And so for several months, I referred to this chart every single day. And I was like, oh, what am I supposed to be eating today? Oh, okay, let me eat that. What exercise am I supposed? And people thought I was kind of crazy. My husband's like, what are you looking at? I'm like, oh, because it's inside my kitchen cabinet door, right? So, um, for months and months, I read this every single day. Like, what am I supposed to be doing today? And I think that helps because it gave me like a plan. And now it's much more intuitive for me. Like, I still track my cycles. I still know what week I'm in, but I'm much more relaxed about the foods I eat and the exercises I do and what's going on, because I know after so many months of looking at that spreadsheet, I'm like, okay, I know. And sometimes I don't follow it, right? Sometimes you can't if you're on vacation or you're at a wedding or whatever. And it's just, how do I work around it? Like if I know I'm going to a wedding in my menstrual phase where I'm supposed to be home and relaxing and this and that, I'm going to make sure I'm relaxing before and after the wedding. So at least I can enjoy it a little bit better than, being miserable and in pain and uncomfortable. I'm going to eat the foods that I like, the anti-inflammatory foods. I'm going to stick to more vegetables and fruits before the wedding. I'm going to eat whatever they have at the wedding. I'm going to enjoy myself. And then the Monday after the wedding, I'm back to my, okay, now let's detox a little bit. Let's have a little bit more vegetables and anti-inflammatory foods to help, get me through that enjoyment of the foods and things at the wedding. Lack of sleep, right? There's all kinds of things that come up. But if you're taking care of yourself before and after these events and you kind of know where you are in your calendar, you can do it.
And to me, that reminds me of when you first start practicing medicine and you have that little, I don't know if you're old enough that when you first started practicing medicine, you had an actual notebook, right? Like in your pocket, a notebook in your lab coat pocket. And you would go to do your surgeon's like post-op orders and you're like, do they like this or this? And you turn to the page in the notebook and like it's referenced. And then a year later, you're like, I don't know where that notebook is, right? But I could tell you everything that's in it that I do on a regular basis because it's now in here. I don't need to reference a notebook. It is now sort of part of what I do. I don't need to use that reference all the time. So what a beautiful illustration of, it feels like hard and clunky and like we have to get used to it at first. And then once it becomes part of the fabric of our lives, it doesn't become, you don't need the reference sheet anymore. You just do it based on what you know about you and your life. Well, this has been so helpful. Where can people go to find more resources, to follow along, to connect with you, learn more about your teachings and your programs?
I'm just going to share one thing real quick, but if you do a quick search on Pinterest for cycle syncing, you will get a whole bunch of charts and graphics that will help get you started. Just throwing it out there. So for me, you can find me on social media. I'm pretty active on Facebook and Instagram at The Wealth of Wellness LLC. If you go to my website, thewealthofwellness.com, I have a free guide on how to start eliminating your monthly PMS symptoms. And if you're a healthcare provider, I just recently launched a little mini course giving an introduction to cycle syncing for healthcare providers.
Awesome. I feel like this is something that if you didn't know about it and your clinician recommended it to you, as a patient, I think you would just feel so seen that this is something that they're thinking about, a way that they can improve your life above and beyond mitigating pain and acute and chronic conditions, but rather like, how can we make this better for you? That would be so awesome.
Wouldn't you trust your provider a little bit more?
Yeah. Great, awesome resource. Well, thank you, Amy, for coming on the show and for sharing this great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun.
What an important reminder that none of us is the same every day, that each and every day is an opportunity to tune in to how we're feeling and what we need, whether that's emotionally or physically when it comes to our cycle, or just knowing what we need emotionally in that moment. I hope that this episode invited you to pause and touch base with yourself and see what you're feeling and what you need during this season. If this episode resonated with you, please take a moment to leave us a review, 5 stars, and a little blurb about what you like about the show. Send it to a friend or colleague who is a woman who takes care of women who might need this reminder themselves. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to another episode of The PA is In. That's all for today. This PA is out. Congratulations, you've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.